Now on BBC One, Luquessa Burak has this week's Inside Out East Midlands.
Hello from Melton Mowbray in Leicestershire. It's more than a year now since Rosie Ailiff received the worst news imaginable. Her 20-year-old daughter, Mia, had been killed whilst backpacking in Australia. Tonight, though, is about what happened next. Rosie's been to Queensland to see the hostel where Mia was stabbed to death.
She fought for her life until the very last minute from the sound of it. She got on her feet and she ran to safety, what she thought was safety, to a bathroom where she could lock herself in. And then she was still fighting for her life. And she's gone, you know, and it's tough. It's tough to be here, and I knew it would be, but I'm so glad I came because I feel like I owed it to Mia.
We'll have the latest on the campaign to protect young backpackers.
We don't know who the labour contractors are, we don't know which farms they're working on, we don't know which towns they're living in.
6 on the trot's a world record. And he's done it! He's done it!
And we'll look back at the days when you could bump into a cricketing legend at the local pub.
To go home on the Saturday night and say, I saw Gary Sobers, I spoke to Gary Sobers, I had a drink with Gary Sobers, and I shook his hand when I left. What memories? What memories?
The stories that matter closer to home. I'm Luquessa Burak, and this is Inside Out for the East Midlands. Well, first tonight, when 20-year-old Mia Ailiff Chung was stabbed to death at a backpackers hostel in Queensland, Australia, her mum thought she'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But Rosie Ailiff soon learned of a dark world where some backpackers trying to extend their visas are exploited, threatened, and even risk their lives. Well, now, as Rachel Gilchrist reports, Rosie's campaign to protect young people is being heard right around the world.
I'm so glad I'm here.
This is a story of journeys and of loss.
I'm dealing with some quite interesting emotions as I approach the place where Mia spent her last few days.
Of a dark world uncovered.
This is extortion.
People are making huge amounts of money out of our backpackers.
And a campaign that continues.
I've got to get the story out there.
But above all, it's a story of love.
If Mia walked into a room, she lit it up.
Okay, so what's in here then, Rosie?
This is a room that I've sort of dedicated to Mia.
I've known Rosie for more than a year. I was at her daughter's funeral reporting for BBC Radio Derby.
She always wanted to travel since she was tiny. She loved being abroad. I suppose I was at my happiest when I was travelling, and so was she.
When Rosie said she wanted to go back to Australia, to the Queensland hostel where her daughter died, she invited me to tell that story, and I went with her.
It's kind of a little bit of a journey in Mia's footsteps to see where she visited. And I don't know which way it's going to go, but I'm hoping it will help me to come to terms with her death.
It was at the backpackers hostel where she was living that she was attacked. The attacker was a 29-year-old French national.
Mia's murder was reported around the world.
This was Mia just a few days ago on her way to work on a farm.
Tom Jackson died after trying to save her from Smail Ayed's knife. To extend their Australian visas for another year, Mia and Tom joined the 88-day scheme run by the Australian government.
If you want to stay longer than a year on a working holiday visa in Australia, then you need to do 88 days, 3 months of work in agricultural or various other industries in remote regions.
Mia came to Home Hill on the promise of work at nearby farms.
I think the crop that we're passing is sugarcane, and when you see how tall it is, and imagine Mia working in that field, that was way over her head. So that's all I'm really thinking about, is Mia in those fields. You know, it's pretty hot out there.
At Home Hill Hostel, Mia shared a small room with her killer.
Burdekin Memorial Hall. Home Hill Royal Society. Pink building on the left, which I think may well be Home Hill Hostel. Yeah, that must be Home Hill Hostel because I can see hostelers. Here we are, bright blue sky, beautiful day, 2 little trees in a park and a pink building, which is like the pictures I've seen in the press.
The hostel owner has refused to meet Rosie, but she will allow her inside later. She's brought plants for a memorial garden to Mia and Tom. A couple of backpackers offer to help.
What's your opinion of this 88 days of farm work?
When you talk about that with other backpackers, they say a lot of story, because everybody have a story about the 88 days, about the work in the farm, about a lot of stories.
Bad stories, yeah.
Yeah.
Rosie's almost 10,000 miles from home, and the last few steps of this journey she has to make alone. But she is wearing a microphone. Some viewers might find what happens next upsetting.
I've been brought to the place of Mia's death. I'm sitting in the cubicle where Mia died. And apparently she fought for her life, even with chest injuries, even after a blow to the heart. Mia was still fighting for her life. And Tom tried to save her. I just feel destroyed, really. It was always going to be hard, but, you know, just the thought. My girl lying here dying in a toilet, it's just not easy. I'm going to say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day your daily bread, and forgive our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. That's what comes to you, isn't it, in your darkest moments, that you revert to the faith of your youth, and that's what I did. And she's gone, you know, and it's tough to be here, and I knew it would be, but I'm so glad I came because I feel like I owed it to Mia.
In the hostel, the Queensland police gave Rosie the full details of her daughter's last moments.
She fought for her life until the very last minute, from the sound of it. She got on her feet and she ran to safety, what she thought was safety, to a bathroom where she could lock herself in. And then she was still fighting for her life minutes afterwards. Knowing what I know, and you know, it's going to put it to rest, because I hope, because I now know everything, and instead my conscious and unconscious mind has been searching for answers to what happened that night, and now I've had the police account, and I can't do any better than that.
Rosie's journey has become twofold: to retrace her daughter's last steps and to campaign against the conditions some backpackers face.
What in particular did you find out about the farm work scheme and how young people like Mia, like a lot of her friends, are being possibly exploited by it?
When I first came to Australia to pick up Mia's body, I started to hear stories about other young people who were involved in the same government programme that Mia was involved with. And frankly, I was shocked, I was horrified at some of these stories, and some of the messages that came to me in the subsequent days and weeks through social media suggested mass exploitation, so I decided to look into it more.
I arrived here 3 weeks ago.
One of those to contact Rosie is Juro Vukatic, who also did farm work for his visa.
It's just mentally disturbing to sit every day and doing nothing. The treatment is very, very bad. The language that is being spoken towards backpackers is non-acceptable. And I mean, I've seen incidences where people have been denied water, been denied going to the toilet, and just being fired for no particular reason. There's lies going on, like, I mean, the hostel owner will tell you there's work, so he makes you travel a destination of 2,000 kilometers. When you come there, you realize 5 weeks has passed and he hasn't given you the work that he promised. We're speaking about people working in 40 degrees, some of them are 18, 19 years old. People collapse mentally, they just break down. It was almost like being in prison rather than being in Australia.
Rosie is ruffling feathers out here. She's meeting influential people and finding out more about the exploitation of backpackers.
If it's raining for 2 weeks, as it often does in tropical Queensland, there's no work, so the backpackers are getting further into debt, and that's when we see practices like seizure of passports, seizure of laptops, things like that, in order to stop people from leaving.
It's been quite a journey. I've met young so-called backpackers who've encountered quite harsh conditions in the field and who've had experiences which, you know, I don't think people back home would be happy about. I've got to get the story out there. You know, I have to do my best to do something to stop what's happening here.
Back home in Cromford, Rosie's efforts are reaping rewards. 3 Australian states are now looking at regulating labour hire, and her online campaign continues. In the last year, 1,500 people have signed up to her Facebook page, and now a website has been set up. One of the first to tell Rosie their story was backpacker Joy Lakin from Derby.
We kept being picked up in the middle of nowhere, dropped off again in the middle of nowhere, being told we had work and then suddenly we don't have work, being made to work for accommodation and put down money for equipment and put down money for board, and then realise that you can't actually afford any money for food or to have a good time, which is kind of the whole point of travelling anyway.
This is our Tom and Mia's Legacy group page, and then the actual website, 88 Days and Counting. Basically, you can search for different areas in Australia, hopefully guiding people from the worst places and towards the best places, and then there's quite a lot of advice. If you'd had something like this when you were doing your 88 days, would that have been useful?
It would have made such a difference. It's great to have something so wonderful come from such a tragic experience, to be able to make sure that other mothers won't have to feel like this. I can't say enough about how well Rosie's done, because she really has made it easier for everybody to feel a bit more safe, and hopefully, you know, Mia's name will live on in a more positive light.
I was winding down. I was looking forward to Mia settling down. She wanted to have kids earlier rather than later because she wanted a big family. And that's heartbreaking. What I can do is to carry on trying to bring kids like Mia home in one piece, and also having had the time of their life, which is what travel is all about. And what I feel is that we've made a start. We've definitely made a start.
Well, what an amazing film, and I'm with Rosie now. It's been a few weeks since we spoke to you making that film. What in particular has been happening regarding the website?
Well, I wake up in the morning and the first thing I'm greeted with is stories from young people who are often in trouble, and some of it can be quite harrowing and difficult to deal with. Stories of young people working on equipment that aren't properly manned, where they're losing digits, which seems to be quite a frequent hazard, and when they're injured in the workplace, they aren't taken to hospital, they aren't treated well, they are sacked out of hand, this kind of thing. Young people arriving in a hostel and finding that there is no work, all of this, being thrown out of the hostel in the middle of the night and ending up on the street at 2 a.m. in the morning. It's just, there's no regard for their safety, but there is a growing body of people who want to help.
And you're coordinating all that from the UK. That can't be easy.
No. It seems just ironic that young people are saying to me, you are our only port of call. You are the only person we can turn to because there is nothing out here.
And what's the reaction been like from Australia? Some of those farmers can't be happy.
I am ruffling feathers. I'm aware that that is the case.
What sort of things are they saying to you when there's a comeback?
If I tell you some of the messages I've received, you'd be horrified, to be honest. Just that kind of internet barracking that you might expect.
Trolling, almost, is it?
There's some trolling, and some of it is quite personal as well, as you can imagine. I've just got to be brave because I am speaking on behalf of young people who don't have a voice. So I've just got to do it. I've just got to bite the bullet.
And what about in the UK? What sort of moves have been made?
The UK High Commission, which is based in Canberra, have taken up the baton with this, and I'm really happy that they now have advice for travellers who may be doing their 88 days on their website. They say, for example, make sure you take copies of your passport, don't hand your passport over. They've also got a reporting line which I report to on a regular basis and which I'm encouraging young people to report to. But it's not the natural place to look for advice when you're going to Australia. Where you would look for advice would be on the Australian immigration website, and that's where these links need to be, and that's the missing link, if you like.
You have been talking to some pretty influential people. You made a speech recently at the Gangmasters and Labour Abuse Authority. What happened? How did it go?
My aim was to raise awareness of the issues and to make the connection between what happens to immigrant workers in the UK and what's happening to our own young people in Australia, because I don't think the majority of people in that room would have recognised that their own young people were in danger from the same effects as the vulnerable workers in this country, because you don't see young UK travellers as vulnerable in the same way as you would recognise that among Central Europeans over here. But our young people are made vulnerable by their hopes and dreams for a better life in Australia.
Rosie, have you done enough now?
The objective of the campaign was to get the message out there to the Australian population and to people in the UK. So yeah, I've reached that objective. It's in the bag really, but the issue is that I'm still that main point of contact and that conduit for information to the British and Australian authorities. So in all honesty, I can't stop now. To me, it shouldn't be me who's losing sleep over this. Somebody else is responsible and somebody else needs to take over where I leave off. And this is Tom and Mia's legacy. It's about keeping our young people safe. That's the bottom line.
Rosie Aiglev, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, finally tonight, the clocks may have gone back, but we'd like to remind you of those long summer days, the scent of freshly mown grass and the sound of leather on willow. This country has undoubtedly produced some of the greatest cricketing legends, and none were bigger than Sir Garfield Sobers. He captained Nottinghamshire in the twilight of his sparkling international Test career. But what you might not know is that Gary Sobers had a huge impact on local league cricket in the Midlands. Rebecca Wood has taken a step back in time to revisit a golden era.
Trent Bridge Cricket Ground in Nottingham, a regular host of international cricket and star players. But back in the 1950s and 60s, even small local cricket clubs attracted big names and big crowds.
And here in Norton in Stoke-on-Trent, thousands of local fans were treated to a close-up view of the greatest cricket player in the world when the legendary Sir Garfield Sobers signed up for their local league club.
Sobers is arguably the greatest all-rounder the game has ever seen.
6 on the trot's a world record. And he's done it! He's done it!
And his 6 sixes in 1 over is one of the most famous moments in sporting history.
6 on the trot. Goodness gracious.
Sobers, finest cricketer in the world. He could bat, he could bowl at pace, he could bowl spin, either orthodox spin, leg spin. He was so athletic. He moved like a panther. He got everything.
And for those Staffordshire players who got to walk out with the great man, they were incredible days. And one of those players was the former captain here at Stone Cricket Club, Stuart Wood, who I know as Dad.
He was an amazing player, was Gary. When he bent his back, when he really put all he'd got into it, he was as quick as anybody. He would hit you on your leg before you realised what the line and length of the ball was. He was very, very fast.
In 1965, my dad played alongside Gary Sobers and another West Indian great, Wes Hall, in the final of the Rothmans Cup.
It was an exciting time. To have them in the same side as you was really absolutely wonderful. And they went on to greater things, obviously, the two of them. And but at that stage, Gary Sobers was quite the most fantastic cricketer I'd ever set eyes on, and it was a great pleasure to play with him.
Gary Sobers signed for Norton Cricket Club, based at the Miners' Welfare Institute, and it even made the local news.
Gary, you've just come back from India after touring with the Commonwealth team. What made you decide to come to this class of cricket?
This class of cricket, I think, has done a lot for me, and I look forward to coming back here to play in the league, to get away a bit from the sunshine, and to look forward to playing among the league players.
Sobers was part of a tradition of internationals who came over to play in the best English leagues, like here in the North Staffordshire South Cheshire League and the Lancashire League.
There was money to be made in the leagues, but that wasn't the only thing that brought the West Indians to England, as the man himself explains in this rarely seen archive footage.
I think league cricket has helped West Indians tremendously, and I think that all West Indians, or all overseas players, should at least try to get into league cricket. I am sure the cricket would improve tremendously.
Now it's small to riches.
And that message made its way back to the Caribbean.
That's a good shot.
Where the next generation of superstars were listening.
Everybody in the Caribbean thought that England was the best place to learn the trade, to develop, and also, you heard a lot of stories, a lot of players who have come here and they talk about, the pitches being green, the ball seaming around and swinging around, and the different weather conditions. And to me, having it that way where it's difficult and you've got to constantly be making adjustments could only help your game.
The league's got a rich history of some of the best players that would have graced the world where cricket is concerned. Sir Gary Sobers passed through the league, Sir Everton passed through the league, Wes Hall passed through the league. There's just numerous individuals, who would have made their mark at cricket itself, would have played in the league.
Now here comes a great West Indian cricketer and captain, Frank Worrell.
International cricketers didn't earn much back in the 50s and 60s. Not eligible for county cricket, they seized the opportunity to play in the leagues on a Saturday and then for a touring side called the International Cavaliers on a Sunday. Grounds like Norton were rammed with thousands of spectators.
Square would be here.
Cricket isn't played here anymore, but Nigel Johnson, veteran sports commentator for BBC Radio Stoke, remembers those extraordinary days.
Take me back to those Saturdays and what it would have been like when Garfield Sobers was here.
All the way round on the seats, it would have been packed. There'd have been people on seats, there'd have been people standing, not necessarily one row, 2 rows, and people would just be finding a spot where they could see everything that was going on here. And then when the teams came out, I mean, obviously the roar, the applause going up, and it was electrifying. The North Staffs and South Cheshire League was the finest league in the country. So when people came to watch the cricketers, the professionals and the non-professionals, they were watching the best.
So the overseas professionals were coming for the cricket, but Stoke-on-Trent was a far cry from the Caribbean.
It was dull, dark, smoky, dirty and polluted. If I could take you back there, you wouldn't like it. It was a really awful place to live in and to work in. Work was really laborious. No mechanism in those days, no computers. Everything was done virtually by hand and by body.
Thousands worked down the mines or in the potteries, and Saturday afternoon cricket in the fresh air was the perfect escape.
To see Gary Sobers and hope that he's going to hit 6 sixes again off it over, straight out of the ground, or to hope even better that the bowler, the local bowler, was going to get his wicket, that was a big draw.
And Frank Reynolds was one of those local boys.
There's Sobers again, and there.
Playing at Norton for over 30 years, he shared a pitch with many an international superstar.
When you went out to bat against the likes of Wes Hall, Sonny Ramadine, or many of the other Test players, you didn't give your wicket away easily. You were toughened up and you took them on. And in fact, it was a pleasure to me to get the scalps of Test players.
But in 1968, the rules on overseas players changed and they could now move up to play for counties. The glory days of league cricket were ending. The North Staffs and South Cheshire League is still going strong, but the days when superstars played down the road are long gone.
The chance to see Laker, Worrell, Sobers, Hall, all these players were visible. They were approachable, and that was a very, very important thing. To go home on the Saturday night and say, I saw Gary Sobers, I spoke to Gary Sobers, I had a drink with Gary Sobers, and I shook his hand when I left. What memories, what memories.
Fond memories indeed. Well, that's it from Melton for another week. Here's what's coming up next Monday. The con man who exploited bereaved families trying to find out what happened to their loved ones.
He looked as if he was fighting for us, but no, he's only there for one person, himself.
He will continue. He'll con other people.